Good morning and welcome back to BIFA TV, your daily dose of industry information. Before we jump into Ian's episode of What the Papers Say, we have a message from CNS, this week's sponsors of BIFA TV.
CNS, trusted for 40 years, powering UK ports with simpler, smarter trade.
Today we welcome back Ian Matheson to deliver the latest headlines from across our industry. So firstly, Ian, welcome back. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Natalie. I'm getting over my hip replacement, and let's kick on with the news that's affecting BIFA members and the international supply chains over the last week, shall we?
Absolutely.
I noticed quite a lot of editorial coverage actually on the government's new trade strategy, which is going to impact upon members' activities.
Yes, it does appear to be offering a more strategic, pragmatic approach to trade policy, especially in response to protectionism and geopolitical disruption.
That's right, Natalie. I think actually BIFA actually welcomed all of this and confirmed its willingness to work with government on those trade policies that are part of the strategy to try and reduce the administrational burdens and the friction, which is something that obviously BIFA members are well aware of since Brexit forced those major operational changes in customs and border issues.
Yes, our members have definitely been on the receiving end of that friction and the impact that it causes. They've had to adapt significantly to those changes, haven't they, in the last few years?
They have indeed, yeah, and I know that a lot of the guys in the and the girls in the secretariat have been working very closely with UK government and other agencies to try and get things sorted. So let's see how it goes. Now then, there's speculation around Mr. Trump's or Donald Trump's upcoming tariff deadline, which is set for tomorrow, Wednesday the 9th of July, when the current pause on higher duties rates expires. From what I read in the papers, Japan could face new tariffs, while Vietnam appears to have secured a new deal. Of course, it remains to be seen what the impact will be on demand and supply, international supply chains, and the activities of BIFA members within those supply chains.
That's right, Ian. And looking at my notes, we've already seen the May-June spike in demand already fall. So our shippers and forwarders out there will need to monitor how carriers respond to those rates.
That's right, Nat. I mean, we've already seen some vessel downsizing. There's been service suspensions, as well as blank sailings, and they're doing that, of course, to protect rates. And all those things are going to affect how our BIFA members operate and how they provide services to shippers. And in a sort of an associated bit of news, I saw that Nike, or Nike, however you pronounce that, and like Adidas, in fact, plans to raise prices in the USA to offset tariffs. They expect a $1 billion increase in costs as a result of Mr. Trump's actions on the tariffs.
And that will also mean a reduced reliance on Chinese manufacturing as well.
Well, that's what's been spoken about. Let's see what happens on that one, I think. Sticking with kind of container shipping, Alpha Liner showed some interesting data about market concentration in the last week. They say that these new alliances that came about this year, plus the Mediterranean Shipping Company, now control over 80% of global container capacity. That trend, and it's a long-standing argument, it raises concerns about service quality, competition, freight rate volatility, and I guess a lot of smaller players could struggle to compete on some of the key routes against those major alliances.
And again, looking at our notes, the spot rates are falling on the major lanes as well, particularly towards Asia and the west coast of the US. Yet they still remain above the pre-tariff pause levels, don't they, Ian?
That's right, yeah, that's absolutely correct, Natalie. Moving over to the lovely old air freight arena, tariffs are causing uncertainty there as well, especially the changes to the US de minimis rules, and trade flows are being disrupted. Demand, from what I read, remains pretty solid, as does capacity, but costs and routing are all in a pretty mixed state, all in a state of flux, really, I think.
Yes, and forwarders will need to stay agile. As some examples, they'll need to look at their repricing of their lanes, managing their surcharges, but also looking at securing sourcing alternatives as well along the way.
Yeah, that's the case, definitely. I spoke to a couple of forwarders exactly about that last week and how the issues they're facing in just trying to secure capacity and in different trades. Now, on a completely different note, Natalie, I'd like to just talk a little bit about something that's important. Obviously, to prepare for these episodes of what the papers say, I read a lot for the freight and logistics media. And I'd really like to know what publications our viewers follow and find most useful, because there's loads of them out there and they all say, you know, they're the best things since sliced bread. But I'd really like to know what BIFA members read, you know, what publications they read. And if they can send me an email, if they're happy to just drop me an email or give me a call and say, well, these are the publications that we rely on for our information, it would help with a lot of things that BIFA does, and it'd be very handy.
Does that sound like Heavy Lift, or your version of Heavy Lift maybe started back up again?
That would be telling. But I do know that, having spoken to a lot of your members since Lloyd's loading list disappeared from site, they still think that something similar to that, you know, a sailing schedule type publication would be very useful and a great resource for BIFA members.
That's great. You'll have to keep us updated then.
Well, who knows? BIFA might launch one. You never know. Now, finally this week, I keep it quite short for the viewers. I just wanted to send a real heartfelt thank you to everyone who sent me kind wishes on various platforms after my hip operation 10 days ago. I'm pleased to say that recovery is going well, but I have learnt very quickly that a little and often works best with physio.
Well, Ian, it's great to have you back. Thank you so much for joining us again this morning.
Hey, it's good to be back, Natalie, and hopefully what I've told people about today will be of interest to them and hopefully of use.
I think it will be too. Thanks again. As always with these episodes, the articles that we refer to during this episode will be linked in the description below. That's all for today's episode of BIFA TV, your daily dose of industry information.